Besides seeing patients in the office and seeing you here each week, I'm blessed to be able to write books. And tomorrow my 39th book comes out, and I can't wait to not only tell you about it on this episode of Ask Dr. Walt, but also to introduce you to two of the main characters in The Best Gift, Tales of a Small Town Doctor Learning Life's Greatest Lessons.
Today, our health includes our mind, our body, and our spirit. Separating medical facts from fiction is the key that leads to wise decisions about our health and well-being. Unpacking the latest research is vital. Doing what works helps us live our best lives today. How can we live longer? How can we live healthier? Let's ask Dr. Walt on Liftable TV.
Hi everyone, I'm family physician Dr. Walt Larimore, and I'm delighted that you're taking some time to visit with me today because I have some exciting news for you. Those of you who know me know that after my residency in family medicine at Duke, I practiced in the small hamlet of Bryson City, North Carolina for 4 years. It's located about an hour west of Asheville, North Carolina. It had 900 citizens, 38 Baptist churches, and was located on the southern border of the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. My experience in living there resulted in 3 best-selling books: Bryson City Tales, Bryson City Seasons, and Bryson City Secrets. And then Barb and our kids, Kate and Scott, moved to the then small town of Kissimmee, Florida, just south of Orlando, where I practiced for 16 years before moving to Colorado. Last fall, my first book about our Kissimmee days, titled The Best Medicine, Tales of Hope and Humor from a Small Town Doctor, was released and has become quite popular. And tomorrow, the second book about our time in Central Florida comes out, and it's titled The Best Gift, Tales of a Small Town Doctor Learning Life's Greatest Lessons. And in this show, I'd like to take off my white coat, as is obvious, and introduce you to two of my dearest friends, both of whom are main characters in both books. The first was my mentor and coach. The other, my practice partner and accountability partner. And we three would like to share with you the power in life of each person having a mentor and at least one accountability partner. So the first up is my mentor, Brian William Judge Jr., but everybody calls him Bill or Brother Bill. He's a second-generation Florida cattleman who spent his childhood on his parents' dairy farm near the tiny hamlet of Holapaw in Osceola County, where he and his father milked cows, in fact 40 cows, by hand twice a day. Now, after Bill graduated with a bachelor's degree in dairy science from the University of Florida in 1952, his family purchased 600 acres closer to Kissimmee to increase the herd to 1,000 head. And while there, he was named Outstanding Young Farmer in Florida. He became a legend in dairy product production, serving for 5 years as president of the American Dairy Association, also becoming the Florida Dairyman of the Year and being inducted into the Dairy Hall of Fame. He and his wife Jane have been married 71 years. They have 5 adult daughters, 14 grandchildren, and 15 great-grandchildren. Bill, welcome to Ask Dr. Walt.
Thank you, Walt, for having me on.
Well, it's just a pleasure. And as we talked in this segment about mentoring, I'm just wondering, what memory do you have of my calling you and asking you if you'd mentor me that 3 decades ago?
Well, it was a thrilling experience for me. I had just moved churches, and I had been discipling people in the church where I came from, and so this was my first experience in ministering one-on-one. So thank you for the opportunity.
You know, I was mighty young then. I was mighty young in my faith when we met. What challenges do you remember trying to get me on the right path?
Well, one of the things that I remember about our relationship is that we were walking down the sidewalk before sunrise, and we were visiting about different things. and you brought up your wife, and so I was explaining to you about how our wives make their home their job, and then how we make our home making a living for us. And I was just amazed at that point of time in my life, and how you received all of that.
Well, you were a model for me. And I actually remember that discussion, Bill, because I was bringing home all the difficulty from seeing patients and difficult patients and the stress of setting up a practice and getting it going. And it made it difficult when I brought it home, difficult for the kids, difficult for Kate. And I remember you told me there was a little park just at the end of your driveway that I would pass on the way home there on Neptune Road. And you said, Walt, just stop, pull off in your truck there, take a minute, take a deep breath, pray a little bit, and dump all your trash in that stream and it'll flow out to Lake Tahoe. Don't take it home to your wife. And Bill, it was remarkable advice from a remarkable man. I still appreciate that advice.
Well, thank you so much. It was a joy for me to fellowship with you moment by moment all through that day, and that got me started in the right direction for the entire day.
Well, it sure got me in the right direction when you would correct me. Bill, you've mentored young pastors, you've mentored seminary students, you've mentored businessmen, other professionals. What's your goal when you're mentoring a man one-on-one?
Well, one of the main thing that I would like to do is to get Christ in them. In Colossians 1:27, it says, "Christ in you, the hope of glory." And I make that my main goal, is to get that into each one of those people that I'm discipling, and so that they would have something to draw from as they go through daily activities.
I remember you teaching me, you'd say, Walt, the closer that you can get to Christ, the more that you embed His Word in you, the better spouse you'll be, the better father you'll be, the better doctor you'll be. And I've really found that to be true.
Well, that's wonderful. I'm so glad you received that. Thank you for that, Walt. You were a good disciple.
Well, I knew how to say yes, sir. Bill, I also remember you teaching me that Christians need three key influences in their life. Number one, they need a mentor who can coach them and cheer for them and lead for them. Secondly, we need one or more accountability partners that can kind of walk along with us. And then, as we get a little further down the road, we need those behind us that we can mentor or that we can disciple. Why do you think the Lord designed it that way?
I think that there's a God-shaped vacuum in every man's heart to understand who created this universe and who walks with us moment by moment, day by day.
Lastly, as you think back on all of our years together, 16 years there in Kissimmee, where we met every Tuesday morning at about 5 a.m. at Joni's Cafe, which is no longer there. And then, gosh, in the 25 years since, we talk most every week to keep that relationship going. As you think back all those precious years, what are some of your fondest memories?
Well, one of my fondest memory is sharing with you how women, our wives, have their home for their goal, and just like you had your practice for your goal, to equip them, and when you go home, that you can assist your wife in making her home a home.
It does take too, doesn't it? God designed it that way that Barb can see what I can't see. I can see some things she can't. Two together are stronger than we'd ever be apart. Bill Judge, I love you. I appreciate you. And I can't wait for people to read more about our relationship in the book, The Best Gift. Thanks for joining us today.
Walt, I want to tell you how proud I am of you, of mentoring families, couples, and in your day-to-day walk with them. And I just appreciate that so much, because it makes me seem like I made an impact on your life. Thank you, Harry.
Bill, you're welcome. I appreciate you, and I love you. And tomorrow, the book that features Bill, in fact, features both of our guests, will be released. It's titled The Best Gift, Tales of a Small-Town Doctor Learning Life's Greatest Lessons. I hope you get a copy, and I hope it'll bless you. And you can order a copy at drwalt.com. That's drwalt.com. Just click on the tab that says Books. Now, my second guest is also featured in The Best Gift and its prequel, which was called The Best Medicine. He was, for me, my partner, my accountability partner, and my best friend. Dr. John Hartman is a board-certified family physician and has over 45 years of experience in the medical field. He graduated from the University of Miami School of Medicine in 1976, and he and I both met when we were family medicine residents at Duke. He's been recognized as Florida's Family Physician of the Year, and for 7 years, he's received the Patient's Choice recognition, reflecting the difference he's made in the lives of his patients. And this honor is only bestowed to physicians who have received near perfect scores from their patients. And also, 7 years in a row, Dr. John has earned the Compassionate Doctor certification, which is only granted to physicians who treat their patients with the utmost kindness, and is based on a physician's overall and bedside manner scores. Far less than 1% of all doctors in the United States receive even one of these honors by their patients for 5 years in a row. And finally, and this may shock our viewers, John, you've been awarded the Vitals On Time Plus Promptness Award, which recognizes doctors with consistent high ratings for timeliness and appointments and seeing patients promptly. John and his wife, Cleta, have been married 53 years, have 3 adult daughters, 16 grandchildren, and their first great-granddaughter. And he's one of my best friends. John, welcome to Ask Dr. Walt.
Well, thank you for having me on the show, Walt. But gosh, I listened to you talking to me about all those wonderful things, and I'm thinking, who is that guy? I don't know him.
Well, I think your patients recognize it, John. And I should tell people that the awards that you've received for 7 years, the reason you didn't get them your whole career is they didn't have those awards your whole career. You've got them every year since they started measuring. And what your patients recognize is what I see. A man of God who is compassionate. And I think they see Christ in you and through you. So our viewers may be surprised to learn you didn't start as a family doctor. You began your professional life as an engineer. Was that with Motorola?
That's correct, yes. No, I went to Virginia Tech undergraduate and got my degree there. And then I worked for 3 years in Motorola down in Fort Lauderdale. And I always thought that it was a natural transition from engineering on to medicine. Because in engineering, you're faced with certain problems. You don't have the answer at the back of the book that you can page through and find out. You have to go ahead and collect information. These are mathematically terms, and you have to put them in an equation. And the right side and the left side have to be manipulated so that at the end of the day, you got your answer X equals 2. So a lot of that is similar to medicine. You take a history, you examine, you gather information, and then you apply your knowledge. And at the end of the day, you got to come up with a diagnosis and a treatment. So for me, it was a natural transition.
But how did it actually happen? How'd you get from working as an engineer to working into the new profession of family medicine?
Well, it's sort of interesting because people talk about the influence that your parents have on you. This was a very subtle transition. My dad was a medical technician, and all through his life, That's what his job was. And I didn't realize it at the time, but that was coming into me by osmosis. So once I got in and interested and thinking I should make an application to medical school, it just felt like I was in the right place.
Now, as brilliant as you are, as
Oh,
compassionate as you are, John, there's a lot of, for any medical student, there's lots of career choices. Family medicine was one that was really strong on your heart. What led you to family medicine and not another specialty?
well, the beauty of family medicine is that it's a specialty in breadth. So you don't limit yourself to any one particular area. And that's not for the purposes of gaining lots and lots of knowledge. It's for the purpose of being able to treat the whole person. And practice so much in Kissimmee where it wasn't just the sore that the person had on their arm. It was the anguish they were going through at the time. It might have been their relationships at home. And none of that was off balance. It was all bound together, in fact. And to take care of that person, you had to minister to their body and to their soul.
So, John, for viewers, I imagine we have many who see several specialists appropriately for several various issues. Why would you say that they need to also have a family physician?
Well, the family physician is the one that puts it all together, and it's like you can bring any concern at all to your family physician. Now, we might not have the answers to everything, but in fact, we would be able to say, here's a good specialist that's going to take care of this particular aspect of your health, and another one to handle this other aspect. You can have kidney disease and heart disease at the same time. But a lot of these people come back and they say, I went to my specialist and I still have lingering questions. They didn't really tell me how it's going to affect the rest of my life. And I have these other questions I was afraid to ask, but I'm here with you and I know I can tell you anything and ask you anything. So really that's, as a family physician, that's where we take our satisfaction, being able to meet those needs, but also they come to us because that's a place where they can get the answers that they desire.
I remember when we met as residents at Duke, and then you went into the Navy. I went into practice in Bryson City. We, at one time, considered practicing together in Bryson City, but that didn't work out. You got to Kissimmee first. What led you there?
That was sort of interesting. There was a couple other physicians that I was working alongside in the Navy, and they were looking to set up practice in a town that was small enough so we could practice full service family practice, but also open enough where we could make a living. We didn't want to move to a place that had, thousands of doctors and didn't need what we had to offer. We wanted to be able to go to some place where all the things that we've been trained to do, we could practice. And so Kissimmee was good at that point. They allowed us to do so many things, one of which was delivering babies, which we all wanted to partake in.
My goodness, we enjoyed that. I think one of the most precious parts, I mean, we had our professional relationship, we had our outside the practice relationship, but I think what I most appreciated, John, was our accountability to each other. You held me accountable and you allowed me to hold you accountable. Why do you think it's important for particularly young men to have accountability partners?
It's a situation where you allow some balance back in your life. Now, you and I are both married. Not everybody that's a doctor would be married, but being married, you realize that your spouse is your accountability partner in many areas. But being a doctor, you need accountability in the areas that you delve in all the time. There's so much of medicine that has to do with the body and the spirit, and having somebody that understands that and can chart the road together is very important.
Well, I remember, I think maybe my most precious memory of our practice years was that together we began to learn how do we incorporate our faith into our practice. And I remember we started learning how to take a spiritual history with our patients, and we learned how to pray with our patients, and we learned how to refer patients to pastors and to priests. What was it you think that led us down that path?
Well, I see it as a desire to serve the whole patient. And once again, and so many times people would come on in and have a chief complaint. Okay, I've got a sore throat, my ear hurts, and I need something because I need to get back to work. But it's then at the end of the visit, it would be, oh, by the way, there's something else I wanted to say. And oftentimes that something else was really the core of the matter. And many times it was a heartbreaking issue. Like, my spouse just told me they want a divorce. And so, at that point, it's like, okay, we got to go ahead and address this. This is way too important not to address.
I remember so many stories of us practicing together. I remember one time we always had coffee in the morning, and we'd share jokes and puns and stories of what's going on in the hospital. But it was a Monday, and you were particularly serious, and you questioned me about the church that Barb and I were going to, and said some things about the church that you were going to. And then you said something like this, John. You said, our faith in Jesus, our spiritual faith is important to us. How come we don't bring that to work more? And it was just like lightning went off. I mean, it was a great question. And the only answer I guess I had was we never learned how, never knew how. It was never modeled. And then we began to, I remember we called David Larson at the National Institute of Mental Health, and he came down and gave us some information on how to take a history. And I remember we were deciding we were going to pray with patients, and we went to a delivery together, and I used their names with their permission, but it was Ruthie and Jimmy Casano. And you were attending the birth, and I was helping on the side. And at the end of the birth, after the baby was out and doing well, and we're cleaning up, and I remember telling Ruth and Jimmy that we had been praying for them the whole pregnancy, and this little baby, this little girl, theirs was an answer to prayer, and that we were wondering if it would be okay if we did a prayer of thanks. And I remember Ruthie looking up at Jimmy, and he shook his head, and she looked down, and she looked up at me, and she shook her head. And then I said, Dr. John, will you pray? Because I was too chicken to pray.
Well, I remember that incident distinctly. And I was there. You were leading the conversation. I thought, well, you're going to take it and run with it. So I wasn't even prepared to say anything. And then it was like, uh-oh, this is the moment. We've been talking about it. We've been thinking about it. If it's going to happen, this is the time to open my mouth and say something. So I don't remember anything about what I said, but it was along the lines of, praise God for this beautiful baby and what a miracle this is. And that really catapulted me on to opening this subject up with many other patients over the years.
Yeah. Why do you think we were so scared to do this? Was it that we just didn't know how, or were we scared of what people would say? What do you remember about that?
Well, we all want to be thought of well in other people's eyes, and yet, if we have not been taught, have not been mentored in this, then it's like, okay, we're here just going by the seat of our pants. And so, there's an apprehension about what can we do. And I always love this saying from G.K. Chesterton, which was, a job worth doing is worth doing poorly. Because everybody reacts to that and says, no, you got the whole thing wrong. But if you dwell on it a little bit, it's like, okay, if praying is so important, just do it. And if it comes out sounding funny, okay, that was your first go. And, as things go along, you get a little better at it as you practice more. But
you say that story of Ruthie and Jimmy catapulted you into prayer, and boy, did it. I remember not too long after that, I was seeing a patient that often saw you. Her name was Gail. Very crusty woman, no interest in spirituality. She used God's name, but not the way you and I would. And I was seeing her for, I think, a prescription refill or something. You were out of town. And so I talked to her and filled the prescription. And I said, is there anything else? And she said, well, absolutely. And I said, absolutely what? She said, you need to do what Dr. Hartman does every time he sees me. And I said, what's that? She said, he prays for me. And John, here was this sort of lost woman that you prayed with. It touched her. She asked me to pray with her. And my memory is that her relationship with God later flowered. She developed a severe cancer, but she became one of the pastors in our practice. And it started with her family doctor, you, having the courage to take care of her whole person right where she was at. Not to push her, not to preach to her, not to persuade her, just to love her where she was at. And I think that's part of what makes you such a great family doc.
Well, don't build that up too much, because the flip side of this, Walt, is that the praying for the patient, although is appreciated by the patient, also changes the one who's praying. So even as we were taking those steps forward, we were changing ourselves, and the prayer actually, the way I look at it, was better for us than it was for the patient, because it just crystallized what our desires were, what our intentions were for serving and doing our best to heal those patients.
Well, I abandoned you 21 years ago. You have continued to fight the battle there in Kissimmee, caring for patients. As you think about our viewers around the country, many of whom say, Dr. John, I'd like to find a doctor like that. I'd like to find a family physician like you. How do you recommend they find a family physician that can serve the whole person? When people leave you and to another town or another state, how do you recommend they look for a family doc?
There might be a couple of ways. One, of course, a natural way would be talk to other church members and say, well, who do you go to and why do you like them? One of the other areas that I think would be a natural lead into that would be to investigate direct primary care, because in that scenario, the doctor is allowed, how odd that is, allowed as much time as he wishes with the patient and their needs. And these days, with the advent of computers and technology, there are many constraints upon our time, and you don't have time to do everything that you might identify that the person needs, and yet how very important that is.
I hope that our viewers will have seen in you today, and I think the John that I know and to love and that I still do, for walking with me those 15 years. Thanks for being a friend since, and thanks for being here today on Ask Dr. Walt.
Well, thank you for having me, Walt. And I just that what you're doing right now will have ripple effects over lots and lots of counties, lots of states, all over the Americas. And most of the time, you won't even know the effect that you're having. So, but being bold, bringing the issues out into the public square, that's really important. So keep up the good work. God bless.
Thank you, John. You always told me, it says not what you do, Walt, it's what God does in and through you. And I've seen that in you, Brother John. God bless. Love to Cleta. I hope you've enjoyed meeting my practice partner for 15, 16 years and my mentor of 36 years. I would not be the man, the husband, the father, or the physician I am without these two men and all the Lord did in and through them for me and for my family. And if you're interested in reading more about them, and I hope you are, I hope you pick up a copy of The Best Medicine or The Best Gift, the book that comes out tomorrow. That's The Best Gift or Best Medicine. You can get them delivered just in a day or two by going to www.drwalt.com. That's drwalt.com, and click on the Books tab. And at drwalt.com, you can also sign up for my newsletter or blogs. Thanks for being with us today, and until next time, dear friend, I pray that you may enjoy good health and that all may go well with you, even as your soul is getting along well.